And you can't blame that on anybody but the, you know, what can you blame the drought on? It's just nonsense that is happening, but it's the way it is. It happens every 20 or 30 years here in the United States. We have a major drought. But, like I say, the only thing Perry has been bashed about by the farmers was them trying to take their land to run a NAFTA highway through. And they rose up furious over it.
Yeah, one of the solutions that I've come up with, and by the way, part of the solution is coming right out of Texas, and that's if we grow our own food and generate our own energy, we don't need the government, the banks for much. You know, don't need them at all, actually, and that's going back to the basis of every civilization, the self-sufficient family farm. Now, I think that would work in Texas. And also in Texas, I've got an engineer that is supposed to be building me a little briefcase-size magnetic generator that'll power a whole thing. You know, power a whole house or power a whole Liberty Village. And if we're generating our own power, they've tried to suppress this. This is one of the things that really startled me about the Tesla convention there in Albuquerque. Everybody talks about it. Everybody talks about the magnetic motors and the Tesla energy, which we had 100 years ago, and it hasn't been developed at all. And the people that have built these magnetic generators have torn them down because they're afraid. They're afraid they're going to be killed, and they will try to kill them if they're not protected in some way.
I met a man in the Houston area one time that built them. He invited me to his home and showed them to me. Tesla, I think he had built it. One was about the size of an old kitchen table, you know, good sized box. He said that would power the whole block. He said that was my early version. He goes, after I got studying into this thing and what Tesla had done, that he had it built down to almost like a transistor thing on the that you stuck on the outside of the wall. You put it outside, but it was about the size of the transistor radio back then that would power his house. So the technology is there, but he was scared to death of even trying to get a patent on it because he knows what the feds will do.
They won't give them a patent. They won't give them a patent. The way to do this is to spread out the manufacturing in a lot of small units, manufacture parts individually, ship them all together, have small villages assemble them, and sell them right out of the villages, and bypass the whole patent system, because the patent system is just there so the corporations can grab your invention. And they'll give you a couple of $1,000,000 for your invention so they can bury it.
Well, we had a man from the Dallas area many years ago. They developed an engine that ran on vegetable oil, but it got over 100,000 miles per gallon because the concept he built did not burn the oil. It only heated it up to expansion and then cooled it back down, and that's pushed and pulled the pistons. And he was on his way to El Paso. We just figured Exxon must have bought him on the way because he never got back. No one ever heard a word again.
Or they just disappear, man. They, you know, I'm sure they got more sophisticated technology now than a block of concrete and a chain, but that's
what we're looking for. In Texas, we have a whole group, arm of our movement that's dedicated to uncovering what science is available for our future. So we're ready to jump on those projects as soon as we're no longer paying the Fed to steal from us. We're talking about desalination plants on the Gulf that will actually pump water back up to our aquifers. Not using it for direct water, but pump it to the aquifer so the farming areas are never dry again. And the technology is available. It's just a matter of where we put our priorities. And so far, I think our priorities being in Iraq and Afghanistan and now Libya has been wrong. It's been wrong probably since World War I. We have lost too much of our assets and too much of our financial, too much of our manufacturing over the years to make it make America even a viable country anymore. And we want to reclaim what's been lost in Texas. because we have the engineers and we have the skilled help and we have everything we need to get it done, except we can't get, till we get loose of the federal government, it cannot get done.
Well, the government, and these agencies, all of your Secret Service, your CIA. First of all, CIA is the ones that are in the Mossad in conjunction. Maybe it's the same agency now. Is bringing all the drugs in. And
Oh, yeah.
I did a novel about 40 years ago about Texas keeping these same laws. I'd actually like to rewrite the novel. I'm in the process, and I'd like to see Texas become the good guys in my story here by abolishing all the laws against victimless crimes. If there ain't no corpus delicti, there ain't no crime.
And that was the beauty of the original Constitution, was it was designed to be that way. But you can't let any, like I say, any religious sect of any sort interfere with the government and that goal you're talking about. Because it's not government's job to be God or be enforcing God's rules, and it's almost turned in this country where the Christians are looking to the government as a God, and they don't even know they've got their idols set up that way.
The last executive order of Obama's was he said there was just tremendous economic potential in these rural areas, and Texas is probably 80% rural, the small towns. And I said that's always been our strength and our source of independence. But my family in Texas was in the oil business, and they were just talking on the chat room, said there's so much oil in the ground, there's enough here to make us energy independent for hundreds of years.
There is in Texas, I know.
And North Dakota, yeah, it's not being dug up. They stopped the wildcatters. They stopped the people. This was 40 or 50 years ago. That's how long this plan's been going on to outsource our wealth out of the country so they can build nice high rises instead of living in tents in Dubois.
I personally am against us being so energy independent. That's actually putting a noose around one's head. Depending on something that is always going to be a limit, even if it's a 100-year limit, it's a limit. Whenever the sun is going to be limitless for a billion years. But I believe we ought to conserve and use our oil for Texas, to develop Texas, to get it up, but also use it as right now I would say use it as a pattern to get away from it. We're going to need it you're always going to need it for something. But to depend on what we're doing, like I don't need my air conditioner running on oil-generated power plant. Not when we got other methods that can do it. The magnetic generators work, and they're building them in Australia. We could build them right there in Texas. We could build them in Texas with the protection of the state. And if the people are given solar and wind generators to put on their own houses to sell back to the power companies, suddenly it's the people of Texas that are making money from selling back to the grid. To me, that seems like the most reasonable, fairest way to go. Instead of having a bunch of elite control all of your energy, the people control the energy, and we can make biodiesel from running you got a lot, run a tube of water through it, put the algae in it, and siphon that off and make biodiesel. They got little converters that you can put in your garage, make your own fuel. And so you're looking at it the same way we are. You're looking at it from a different angle, but it's called getting released from being dependent on one source of energy for everything. And in Texas, we can afford to stay on oil forever, but there's no need to, and it is going to be polluting if you do it. When there's other methods available, it doesn't pollute anything like you're talking about.
That's right.
That thing in the garage can actually take pollution out and reclaim it and develop the energy.
And by the way, you were absolutely correct about this engine. There was one engine there, and they were demonstrating it. it was a completely sealed system, and it just had some type of fluid in there, some type of material in it that changed pressure and drove the engine. So it would run without fuel for hours and days and weeks and months.
Yeah, like I said, and that all our technology has been quashed. You know, we think that in the Republic of Texas, when we finally get this thing free, that going to Mars is not going to be a big deal because the science is there for it. It's just that we've been patterned down and pushed down, and to think we can't do it, the only government can do it, is nonsense.
Now, they're also saying on the chat room here that hemp products would bring back the family farms, and you know, my whole plan for Liberty Village is to restore the self-sufficient family farm by turning it into a village where people are working together. I mean, if people can work together, we've got a shot. If they won't work together and they want the government to take care of everything for them, then we got full-blown communism.
True, you know, like I said, the Henry Ford built we built more than one vehicle, Ford cars out of hemp. The body was made out of hemp.
You could
one of the World's Fairs where you took an axe to it, and you couldn't break it or bend it.
That's right. They couldn't. They could hit it with a sledgehammer or an axe, and it would bounce off.
The technology is there for this stuff, and it's really quashed. What kind of government do I need that quashes energy, that quashes invention, that quashes technology in favor of giving our trade away? That's what we've got now. And we think that doesn't have to be. You know, we can still trade with other countries. We always have in the world. That doesn't mean you give away the store.
Well,
you know, these people that are laissez-faire about economics, and they like to cite Adam Smith for free trade, have never read Adam Smith. I guarantee you they've never read him. They never read the part where he said there are things you protect your own country. They never read the part where he said unions are a necessary evil to hold the corporation in check. They never read him. That's the mistake I did. I did read him.
You know, it kind of brings up another interesting point. Since you're my publisher, you know, I'm not selling as many books as I thought I would. But you say that nobody is. The people aren't buying books right now. I just passed the borders that have been closed down in Tucson.
Yeah, and the publishing, actually NBC was reporting on the publishing outlook, and it's not good for the next 2 or 3 years. People have sold them this idea that Amazon is the do-all that ends all. People don't realize that Amazon is the prime force that caused the price of books to increase double overnight.
Amazon?
It's their fault. It was laid in their lap. And Borders and Barnes & Noble and anybody else in Hastings books will tell you that. The prices drastically increased because of Amazon. While you thought you were getting your 15% off, the publishers were having to raise prices to cover that 15%. You know, it's all smoke and mirrors. You never get anything cheap. You pay for what you get. If you don't pay for it in this particular product today, you're going to pay double for that product tomorrow. And you know, one example of that is the happened to us in this country is like air conditioning compressors for your car. Now I can remember, and you can remember too, back when we had Fords, we had the York compressors, and they'd last 2 or 3 years, and you had to replace the reed valve, which cost $16 if you did it yourself. Or you go to the big fancy one from General Motors that the Cadillacs had, black tube one, and it would cost you $125, but you couldn't rebuild it, but it would last 10 years. Now you got to pay $1,200 or more to get a little piece of junk from China that they call a compressor that will not last 2 years, because they ran all the compressor people out of business in the country. Now the foreigners monopolized that industry. When they got the monopoly, they shot the prices up 100 or 1,000% even. That's what's happening to this country, and that's what we in the Texas movement recognize, and what we're going to put a stop to. It's going to come to a halt, because if I'm going to pay $1,200 for a compressor for my car, I'd much rather pay it to a Texas company at $1,200 per compressor, I think they could make a few bucks.
This whole thing about hemp, would the Texas, if we take back Texas, would the farmers be allowed to grow hemp or anything else that they want? I mean, you know, I personally, I don't believe that Texas should have ever gave up the Colorado mountains, you know, the Rockies.
They weren't really giving up; they were taking.
Okay, well, I think that ought to be. I think we ought to reclaim our ski resorts. You know, as far as I'm concerned, all the time I spent in New Mexico, I was on the Republic side of the Rio Grande. You know.
People don't realize those people that lived in all those areas, all the way through up into Wyoming, were never given the choice to vote themselves in or out. They were never. It was just assumed that they had to do whatever the federal government said. They were never given an elective choice to determine where they belong.
So we could spread the whole Texas Nationalist Movement, expand it to cover 3 or 4 more states, couldn't we?
Yes, and we're going to offer that when we get free. That's going to be one of our offers. We're going to ask anybody in the original section of Texas to get a vote up and vote themselves out of their state and out of the union and back into Texas.
You know,
we may have a peppered nation. Who says it can't work? Because some fool in Washington says that we can't work. Everything they told us would work didn't. We did that in the last 4 years.
We've been listening. I think we've been listening to the wrong people. What class of people out there? What class of people throughout history have actually made a difference? Was it politicians or was it writers?
Actually, it was revolutionaries. Writers fall in there, musicians.
Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, you know. I mean, even around the world, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, you know, he won a Nobel Prize for something he wrote in prison. Yeah. And I did very well with my, I had the Liberty Village poster I've got up behind me right now that shows basically, you know, low-cost structures, each structure with its own power, so we're not dependent on a grid. And my booth was filled with nothing but your books, and we did quite well. We did pretty well, and I hope you got your money.
Oh yeah, we got it. Basically, you've done better at selling books in the past, I'd say, 2 years than anybody else has done in one sitting. You know, we can actually carry books to where those people are that are interested in a particular subject. They just don't. We can't even identify a bestseller anymore because there is no real bestseller. We got one book this week here and another one there, and you know, nothing is very popular anymore as far as reading material because nothing new is really coming out, and the government keeps everything in a crisis mode, so people's attention is taking away from study, research, learning. You know, it's one crisis after another. You know, at least how many? We've already had this economic crisis. We had the banking crisis. Now we have the debt ceiling crisis. The debt ceiling crisis is over. Now we have an S&P downgrade crisis, and it's just on and on. I'm tired of living in a crisis-driven world. I want a little peace.
Well, let's see. Yeah. What did Rahm Emanuel say? Oh yeah. We never let a good crisis go to waste.
That's right. I think Henry Kissinger authored that originally.
I have a suggestion here. You know, one of the things that has stopped me, the accident stopped everything that I had going, and I'd put together quite an operation. I had 2 magazines cranking. I had my films and I had my books ready to go into print, and then suddenly everything ended. But I was getting too much of an audience. I was getting too much of a readership, and I think if I kind of took the books that I've got, you said that's a pretty good description of the whole New World Order. The book I'm writing now, I started 40 years ago in Texas, wrote it in a penitentiary in Texas, Yeah, back when Texas had it was a life sentence to have a joint. Remember that?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
I had a little more than a joint.
Well, I can remember when you only got a $35 fine for having I had a shoebox full back in my teenage years, and it was a $35 fine if you got caught. You know, it's allowing religion extremists to run your country.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but if you got a badge and you got the power to come up and say, Mr. Douglas, what do you got in your pocket? I'm sorry, that's a police state, and I'm not going to go for it. It's none of your business what I got in my pocket. It ain't none of your business if I'm walking down the street and I ain't stumbling and I ain't hurting nobody and I ain't attacking nobody. Leave me alone.
I think one of our pet peeves in this movement too is putting the police back to being peace officers and out of the police business, because we don't need anybody enforcing policy any longer. You know, if nobody's breaking the law, it's policy, and that's all they're doing. That's what a police force does, is enforce policy.
Now, what's been done to me? Suddenly, I got in. I started talking. I got on the internet, and I was talking and interviewing people in the Tea Party. And then I said something about Sarah Palin and pointed out what a plant she was. And then suddenly there's Clay Douglas in the Free American in the NAACP listed as a bigot. They tried to use me to demonize the Tea Parties, and they've done that for 20 years. Well, Clay Douglas started the militia. You're damn right I did. You're damn right I did. I did it in the governor's office. They just don't tell you that part.
Well, you know, you get attacked in the Tea Party if you say anything bad about Sarah Palin. But they don't realize they're substituting her as a god. They're making her an idol. They're worshiping her. And as far as qualifications for being human, she has probably the least. I've never met the lady. I don't have anything personally against her, but what she says is ridiculous. But so do what? They already had one Bush. You want two? I mean, Bush is a guy from Connecticut whose daddy must have bought him his degree from Yale, because he certainly is not a learned man. He had to borrow non-words from a comedian and use them. He ran out of non-words. But the quality, we don't have any statesmen. I don't think we've had a statesman in office in the United States since JFK, probably. We haven't had a statesman in our governor's office probably since World War II. One that knows what the role of government is and knows what it's not. You know, Palin and all that breed of people, Bachman, they do not know what government's role is, and it's not to be our nanny, it's not to be our mama and our papa, and it's not to be our church, and it's not the role of the government to enforce the rules of Christianity on us. You know, it's what bugs me is to see these Christians run up and say, "Oh, Sharia law is coming, Sharia law is coming." Well, I'm not as scared of Sharia law as I am of Christian law, because they destroyed this country. You know, I get really up in Texas. I like beer every so often. And it really is kind of nonsense that I cannot buy it on Sundays after midnight. Can't buy liquor at all on Sunday here. But after midnight, you can't even buy beer. Well, what kind of free trade market is that? If you want free trade and you sit around and you talk about it in circles like that, and then the same people are one-on-one, so you can't smoke in this city, you can't drink over here like that for so many hours. It's nonsense. These people have a business. Most of these are, like in Texas, most of these places that sell beer, they're little tiny mom and pop joints. I want to see neighborhood bars again. So you don't have to drive to a bar and and take a chance of driving drunk. You just walk down to the local corner bar. You know, that was the nature of freedom, and I think we've lost that in this entire country. And I think Texas still has enough remembrance of the old days, of what was right, what was wrong then, to put this thing back together for Texas. And other states can follow suit and can use it as a model. We see Texas is holding up a banner for a true, neutral, peaceful nation. as a model for the world. The
that's it. That's the other thing, Lauren. You know what I've told people. I am in favor. I'm impressed with Jesus. Now I think they kicked him up to the status of God back at the Council of Nicaea about 250 A.D. when the Pharisees took over the church that he had kicked them out of. You know, they took it over, and I mean they're still with us. They're still with us here, and what Jesus taught, and I think he's the first rebel in history that conquered the problem we got today. How do you fight evil without becoming evil?
I like what Gandhi had to say about him.
What do
the missionaries? He goes, "I like your Jesus. I do not like your Christians." You know, because he could see that what they were and what they were saying were not the same. That's been how many years ago? And I saw that. I was raised in church. I mean, when that door squeaked, we were there when I was a kid. And I got a lot of good memories from church. But they were still lying. They were lying through the teeth. They were lying all the way. The preacher was taking money, pocketing it illegally. You know, we had to actually go to state court to remove a preacher from his office. This idea that Christianity is the end-all it does all for this country is nonsense, because if anything, they have damaged it and made true the prophecies of Thomas Jefferson and James Madison.
Well, that's exactly what my fourth novel that I'm working on now, The Lucifer Legacy, is about. It's about this kind of Christianity. To me, it's just the term Judeo-Christianity. I'm a Judeo-Christian. You might as well say I'm a satanic Christian. Thank you.
That's true in a lot of methods, in a lot of ways. You know, not just in the. I had a mentor for several years that was a rabbi, but he was not a rabbi like you see on TV and hear all that nonsense. And he was saying that so much of that stuff that they teach in Judaism is from Babylon. It has nothing to do with Judaism.
Right.
And he said it came out of Babylon. When they came out of Persia, they carried all that stuff back to Jerusalem with them and installed it as though it were the truth, as though it were the original religion. He goes, and it's far from it.
And
it's far from it.
Let me see here. I got a book here I'm holding up for the camera. Mystery Babylon, the New World Order Unveiled. 2,000 years ago, the Bible told us that the coming of the New World Order is the eighth beast, the mark of the beast, and warned us about the Jews who say they're Jews but are not. Jesus told us they were liars and of their father Satan. In this book, the past meets the future. And folks, I'm going to reiterate, my fiction books, mystery, my One Bloody Alabaster Eye and Deadly Flashes of Silver are actually more believable than my non-fiction, Mystery Babylon.
Well, I've actually been thinking that somebody should write a book about domestic terrorism in the United States, but the domestic terrorists are Bank of America. The domestic terrorists are the Standard & Poor's, the Moody's, the J.P. Morgans. You know, if you allow an industry to determine the faith and credit of your nation, you know, they're the terrorists. S&P held the entire United States at bay, and then, in my opinion, performed treason against the United States with Standard & Poor's. By what right do they have to do that? I'm all for capitalism, but the people that nowadays are for a perverted version of it. Capitalism was to serve a purpose. The minute the purpose was served, the corporatism side of it kind of went away, because you put the capital together to do a project or an invention or a new technology, and once it's done, there was no need for any more capitalism on that point.